Close it.
Welcome to 40 Lincoln. We're here at Nineveh Beach in Sag Harbor. Come on in. Giving a sneak preview today of this home. It's a new build. Listed about 2 weeks ago. 5 bedrooms, 5.5 baths. Exquisite design. And we're here with my friend Harriette Cole having a private event. Come on in. We got a sneak preview of living room, open floor plan. Fabulous. And we're having a private event tonight. So back in the reserve. We're having a fabulous event today. Thank you for being here. And my dear friend Harriette Cole with Dreamleapers. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for inviting us. Everybody who's here and everybody who's there. We wanted to share this event with everyone. Everyone who's tuning in. Everyone who's in this glorious place that I call my happy place.
Yes.
What a beautiful home. This is incredible, right?
Yeah, this is very special. So we've been listed just for about 2 weeks. So you got a little sneak preview, and let's enjoy. Thank you, Harriet.
Thank you. All right, Fallon. Ramon, please. You ready?
Still says live.
Let's begin. All right, so everyone, thank you for being here. I'm Harriette Cole, founder of Dreamleapers, which is an educational platform designed to help people access and activate their dreams. I'm all about going inside and making it come forth. And in this place where we are today, that's what it's all about. The sun is shining, people are glowing, we believe anything is possible. And one of the things that's possible is my dear friend Ramon Hervey, who's sitting right here next to me, has told a part of his story about what possibility looks like when you act in service and when you have vision and you understand how to support other people. And that has been his work for more than 40 years. He has written a book called The Fame Game. We talk about fame all the time, but what is it? What does it mean? He talks about what it means, and also he has worked with a bunch of people that you will know to help them to find perhaps their 50 minutes of fame. He's going to tell us what that means. But let me tell you who some of those people are. Richard Pryor, Rick James, the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton, Vanessa Williams. Tell me more.
Don Cornelius, he's in the book. Herb Alpert, George Benson, Ali Cole, Ashburn Simpson, Luther Vandross.
I love Luther Vandross.
Daryl Hall and John Oates, Tina Turner, Paul McCartney.
Just a few, a few people, right? Just a few people. And by the way, Ramon is not a name dropper at all. He understands how to be behind the scenes and make things happen. But we are so grateful that he made this book. So I want to start, Ramon, by asking you, what does fame mean?
Well, it means something different to everybody, I think, first of all. But for me, all the famous people that I've worked with throughout my career, we never talked about fame. We talked about being successful and getting the most out of their art. And I think that fame is really, it's a marriage between art and commerce. And when you do really great art that people will respond to and it sells commercially, then you have the potential to be successful, and that success can lead to fame. I don't believe that fame is a destination. I think it's an accolade, and it's a reward for your hard work and your success. And I think all the people and there isn't one path for fame also. Every artist that I worked with had a different story, a different trajectory in their career. And my job as a manager or a publicist, whatever my role was to shine a light on their strengths and to help them achieve their goals. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration. I don't have any magic potion or anything like that that I can give to my clients and say, if you do this, you take this medicine, you take this pill, you eat your diet. None of that really works. It really is it's a shared vision. And so I've been very fortunate and blessed to work with a lot of people that were very talented. And my job was really to help them embellish and grow that talent and make it, the public ultimately decides your fame as well. So we're just all guessing and we're behind the scenes. But if we do something that seems like everything is clicking, then the public really says we like this. And the longer that the public, as long as you can continue to maintain that balance between art and fame, then I think you do have a chance for sustaining your career, sustaining success, and earning. Not everyone gets 15 minutes, but you can get some minutes, and then sometimes you lose minutes. So it's not a guarantee. Fame is fleeting, but I think if you work hard and you're successful, you always have that success to fall back on, whereas you don't have fame. And you can be successful, stay successful, even in periods, down periods, where your products maybe aren't as successful as others. Every famous person I've ever worked with we've had to deal with failures and setbacks. And it's really how you deal with those setbacks and those failures that allows you to get back up there, get back out there, and be competitive again.
So there's some babysitting as part of this too, right? I'm thinking of one of the most famous people that we may have heard of, and you didn't call it babysitting, I'm calling it that. Richard Pryor. Somebody who is one of the most famous entertainers in the world. And you, behind the scenes, and Ramon writes about this in his book, he never badmouths anybody, by the way, but the storytelling is incredible. But you talk about how you really had to handhold him through some challenging moments just based upon his own personal challenges. And yet, despite whatever occurred for him, he was able to rise above what could have been a downfall. Can you talk about that?
Well, Richard to me is probably one of the most talented entertainers I've ever worked with. He's he may be the GOAT as far as comedians go. And I marveled at him because he was a very vulnerable man in the sense that he made a lot of missteps, but he found a way, and maybe it was because of his humor, but he found a way to market his his pitfalls, and that's usually not in crisis management. As a manager or a publicist, you don't want to focus on, everyone's going to fall, they make mistakes, but you want to move on from those mistakes. Richard found a way to market and actually became famous for doing that. I was instrumental in brokering the first Richard Pryor live in concert film. And at that time, there wasn't an opportunity for any black artist to do to do a concert film. Minnie Bruce had done some in a small club, but there weren't theater presentations of comics. And Richard was one of the first to pull it off. There was a guy by the name of Bill Sargent who he became famous because he offered the Beatles $50 million to do a reunion concert. And he called me up and told me about his idea. It wasn't my idea, it was his idea, that he wanted to do this this live concert film with Richard. And I was his publicist, and I just really believed in the idea. And I thought, wow, this could be really historical moment. And so I talked to Richard, and I talked to his manager, and I said, look, we can ask them for whatever we want, but I think this is a really great opportunity. And I think for me in my business, it's always you don't always have to be responsible for coming up with the idea, but you have to know when an idea crosses your desk and it's really worth investing in and believing in it passionately to try to make it work. And that's where I came in. His manager was a guy from Atlanta named David Franklin, and David said, okay, Ramon, we want to do this, put it together. Give them an offer that we that I can convince Richard to do. And so we finally did that, and we did it at Long Beach Auditorium. And right before the concert, a few weeks before the concert, I'm not sure if you remember, but he got in a major battle with his wife at the time, who was Deborah Pryor. And they got in an argument, and she wanted to leave the house. And he said, well, you can leave the house, but you're not going to leave the house in this car. So he shot the tires out of her Mercedes, and that became big news. And he put that in the concert film. And he did this constantly, even when he almost exploded and died. He put that in the film as well. And he, at the end of that film, that was his fourth film. At the end of that film, he said he did a little bit where he lit a match, and he went, "Who's this?" And they said, he said, I know how you guys think about me. I've heard this joke going around, and I'm gonna show you that I know the joke. And so he lit the match. He went like this, and and people say, well, who is that? It was Richard Pryor. And the whole crowd cracked up. But he had just had that ability, and I think, I've never worked with anybody that could, in each film, there was an album, there was a concert tour, and so he marketed all of his things in a way in which I don't think I've ever seen it done before successfully. But that was just one of the unique things about working with him. But he also made tons of. He used to cancel everything. For a while, I thought that this is my only job, is just to cancel stuff for him. Because he called me up at 3 a.m. one time. We had a show. It was actually a benefit for the Brotherhood's Crusade, really popular charitable organization run by a guy named Danny Bakewell in Los Angeles. And so he wasn't even going to go on until 9 o'clock the next night. So he's calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning to tell me that he wants to cancel for tomorrow night at 9. I said, well, what's wrong, Richard? What's going on? He goes, well, I got a stomach ache. But he said he had gastroenteritis, and I didn't even know what it meant at the time, so I had to look it up. I said, well, that's a stomach ache. Go to sleep. Let's just see. Maybe you'll wake up and you'll be fine. And, he had his wife, the white woman that he was married to at the time was Jennifer. And they were talking on the phone and trying to, tell me what, tell him this, tell him that, tell him this, tell him that. I said, look, guys, let's all go to bed. I'll deal with it in the morning. And so what ended up happening is he said, I want to give $10,000 to the organization, but he's not going to show up. So I told Danny, I said, look, I don't think we need to make this a press thing. It's not, it wasn't like it was at the shrine, but it was a local concert. And let's just do it. We'll announce the donation is being made, and we'll just call it a day. And Danny was fine with that. And so I went there, and I had written out what I wanted Danny to say, and it was approved by Richard. And when I got to the auditorium, I said, "Hey, Danny, so here's what Richard wants you to say." He goes, "Well, no, I'm not saying anything." He says, "You're his man. You get up there and say it." So I had to get up there and talk to. It was a packed house, 5,000 people, and I got booed.
Oh my God!
Even though he was giving him $10,000, but he was constantly putting me in those kinds of positions. I had to lie to Muhammad Ali one time. But that's part of the protection and what you're talking about, the babysitting that you do to service and protect the image of your clients.
So let's pivot to someone where it was very different. Those stories are in the book, by the way. But Bette Midler was one of your clients, and important because she was a pivot between your work at Rogers and Cowan, which is part of why he was able to work with so many great people, into your own company. But you talk about her as a female entertainer who there aren't nowhere near as many females who reach a certain level, and how when there's a story that you tell about how when things didn't work out so well, she didn't belabor it. She didn't turn it into what she may not have been able to turn it into a story like Richard did, but she just kept it moving. Talk about her work ethic and how she was able to build the career that she did and how you helped her.
Well, I met Bet right before she did The Rose, which is the most successful film project that she worked on at that time. And it really launched her as a professional actress. She had been known in music. She had done the Continental Baths in New York. She became somewhat famous in New York, but not worldwide, not globally, or even on the West Coast necessarily. But she was really hot in New York. And I think with Beth, she helped me in two ways. One, during the 70s when I started in this business, there weren't a lot of opportunities for blacks behind the scenes, and there was a struggle for artists as well. And I worked my way through. I started at Motown. I worked at Rogers and Cowan, where I met Beth, and I was assigned to her. I didn't sign her. My boss took me to the meetings. I met with the manager. I met with Beth, and they gave me the blessing that I could, represent her and become her day-to-day person on her account. And so Beth and I became really good friends, and we're still friends to this day. And I represented her through that period and shows. And the one thing that Beth always believed was she was a perfectionist, and she had a really, strong work ethic. But she also got a lot of backlash because she wouldn't settle. And when you're a woman in the entertainment business and you give men backlash, they they pretty much call you out, and it made her life more difficult. I mean, at one point in one of the movies, later in her career, the director, the co-star, everybody dissed her really bad, and she really had a breakdown. This was after, so she's weathered a lot, and her resiliency and the fact again of just understanding, not letting fame define you. I think that's really the most important thing that I learned from Beth. But Beth really gave me an inroad to start my own career as an entrepreneur, because at that time she could have worked with anybody. When I went out and started my own company, I told her, I said, "Hey, Beth, it's time for me to do my own thing." And I've really enjoyed working with you. And the experience I gained from her was she was in every platform. So she did music, film, television. She wrote 2 books while I represented her, and she toured. So I just really learned invaluable lessons from being exposed to every aspect of the business. And later on, when I started my own company, she came to me and wanted me to represent her. And that was really, really important because white artists at that time, they weren't hiring blacks, at all. So for her to come to my company, it really gave me a presence in the industry that even the big black stars that I represented couldn't give me. And so that really opened, doors for me, and just showed that, my whole thing was just to show that I could be competitive and that I could work with anybody. I don't care what color you are, what level you were at. She gave me that experience and the expertise to be. I thought at that point in my career I could represent. I felt I had the tools, to be able to represent any level of star. So I'm forever indebted to her for that.
Okay, I want to turn the page again. So my favorite artist, my husband knows, is Luther Vandross. Right. And yes, and Ramon had some behind the scenes experiences with Luther Vandross, some of which are in the book. Tell us about Luther.
Well, I like to read.
Well.
Tell us the story.
And there's no dirt in the book, but there's some really cool stories.
No, there is. I hope that no one feels there's any good, because that wasn't really my goal. My goal was to give everyone sort of an eyewitness, kind of take you on a passenger's ride to what I experienced and how I look at fame, what I learned from it, and my philosophy and how it's changed since when I first got into business. But Luther, when I first met Luther, I was working with Bette Midler, and Luther had been very successful as a session singer. He did a lot of jingles and big commercials, and he was starting to get his feet wet doing backup work for several big artists, and Bette was one of them. But for Bette, he wasn't featured on stage, and so we were in San Francisco, and she was doing the Concord. It's an amphitheater about 30 40 minutes from San Francisco, downtown San Francisco. And I had some meetings that day, and I was supposed to go in the limo with her to go to sound check because I had some press that were going to be at the sound check, and I missed. I told her I wasn't going to make the limo, so just go without me, and I'll follow up with a car. You know, the entourage, they went in cars afterwards, and so Luther was downstairs in the lobby when I came back. And I said, hey, what are you going, do you want to go to the venue? Because I don't want to waste one car, just myself. Why don't you come with me? So he said, okay. So at this point, Luther weighed about between 350 and 400 pounds. And so we went we went in this little rent-a-car. It wasn't even like a town car. And we sat in the back seat. And it was so tight that I was literally like jammed against the door, you know. And it was 100 degrees. So we were both sweating, and Luther was sweating like twice as much as I was. And then he started to have really short breath. Oh, no. And I was worried. I didn't know him that well. I had only met him one other time before that. So I said, Luther, are you okay? Because we can just pull over. I mean, I don't have to be there right away. Like, I'll get you some water, you know, whatever you need. And he said, no, man, it's okay. I'm fine. This could happen to me if I was walking up the stairs. He goes, I know I have a weight issue and whatever. But I had never seen Luther perform. So when we got to the show, we made it to the show. And the way that Luther was showcased on that show was he sang all the high parts for Bette Midler and the Harlettes. She had 3 backup singers, and they were called the Harlettes. And he was in a curtain on the side of the stage in a stool, and he had a mic, and he had a big plate of food on the table. And so he would sing the high parts and then eat in between. And that was his night. And you never even knew he was on the stage. You didn't even know that, you know, he was credited in the tour book, but you didn't know, you would never know that you didn't see him perform. And that's how he started off. But I ended up working with him also. He was managed by a guy named Shep Gordon, and Shep was another guy that was instrumental in helping move my management career forward. And so I worked with Luther, you know, Give Me the Reason, all of his big songs. I worked with him through that period as well. So, I mean, to me, he was one of the best of all time. But his eating and his the going back and forth with his weight, I think, was what ultimately was his demise. It was too imbalanced. You know, he had liposuction or whatever when you get your stomach shrunk. Gastro, yeah. He had that a couple of times, and he just put so much pressure on his heart. And eventually, you know, he died alone in his apartment. He had a heart attack in his own apartment.
Okay, turning the page again. Many people who are here know, everybody knows who Vanessa Williams is, but many people know that you have a special bond with her. I want to set this up. You know, Vanessa Williams became Miss America. That's right. She was the first Black Miss America, and I don't even think it's an argument as to she's the most famous Miss America. In large part because of how you were able to help her to turn a really negative moment into something that where she could choose her strength. And I'd love for you to talk about your role in supporting her through one of the, you know, most public, difficult moments that a woman can have, and how you helped her to turn her career, to create a career.
Well, I was introduced to Vanessa through this crisis. I had never met her before at all. And I had met a guy, a neighbor of theirs. He was a lawyer for American Canada. His name was Dennis Dowdell. And when she won Miss America, I noticed it, like I'm sure many of you did. I thought, hey, wow, that's great. A Black woman won Miss America. But I didn't really follow Miss America. I didn't really care. But I thought, well, she's cute and, you know, good. And, you know, another Black person, Baker to bury. I thought it was great, you know. And I was living in LA then, and it wasn't a big deal in LA as much as it was here in New York, because she won Miss New York as well. So she had a little bit of notoriety when she did that. And a friend of mine, a Black painter by the name of Phoebe Beasley, had gone to school with Dennis, and she said, well, this guy is involved with Vanessa Williams, and her parents were both school teachers or music teachers. And what happened when she won, because no other black woman had ever done that, the pageant never had to deal with any black organizations. So all of a sudden, all these black organizations and people wanted Vanessa to make appearances, and they didn't know who to talk to or anything. So, and the parents said, we don't want to be bothered with all that because we got school, and so they asked Dennis to help them out. So Dennis, my friend, she was a client actually, Phoebe Beasley, she said, I want to recommend you to this guy named Dennis. You know who Vanessa Williams is, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how, and I met with Dennis, and he liked me, and he said, I think you'd be great for Vanessa, because Vanessa actually wanted to go into entertainment business afterwards. That was her plan. And then around, I think 10 months into, she had only been Miss America for about 10 months, these pictures surfaced, and I had hoped to have met her before then, but Dennis called me up and he said, hey, I have a problem. He said he had heard wind of these pictures coming out, and I said, have you seen him? Do you know what? He didn't have any information, and he wanted to know what to do. I said, well, first thing to do, don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't let anybody know about it until you know what you're dealing with. And that's the first part of crisis management to me. If you don't really know what the crisis is, don't say anything. So he ended up a few days later, the pictures did show up. He said he saw the pictures. The pageant had seen the pictures, and they gave Vanessa 72 hours to resign. They were asking for her resignation. So he said, well, what should I do? And I said, well, if you are asking me, if you want me to manage the crises, then I'll be happy to do that for you. And so this was on a Friday night, or Friday morning when he called me, and I had 72 hours to come up with this plan. And what I told him we should do, let's do a press conference. She'll make a statement. She won't say anything else. She'll read a statement. We'll make it at the very end of the 72 hours. And instead of talking to the pageant, we'll do a public statement to everyone. So everyone will find out at the same time. And so I put together a press conference in New York at the Sheraton Hotel on 7th Avenue for 11 a.m. And I took the red eye into New York that night. And I didn't meet Vanessa or her family until the next morning at 8 o'clock, around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And I drove out to Millwood where they lived. And there was over 400 media. It was like a press encampment out there. It was crazy. And I thought, oh my God, this is a much bigger story than I thought. So my feeling was, knowing what I knew about it, that I thought she should resign because I didn't believe that the pageant would allow her to be in the pageant, which is the only thing left for her to do. As you exit as Miss America, you turn the crown over to the next one. And that's their biggest money maker. That's how they exist, is on that television broadcast. I said, there's no way they're going to let her be on this show. But she had lawyers and her parents, and everybody wanted her to fight for, her crown, or what 4 weeks left of her crown. And so basically over that next 72 hours, there was banter back and forth about what to do. And the lawyers decided that they were going to fight for her to hold on to her crown. That's what her parents wanted to do. I don't even know if Vanessa really wanted to do it or not, but she was willing to go along with the team. And so we put on this press conference. And then an hour before, in the 71st hour, something came up. I'm not going to tell you because I want you to read it in the book. Something changed, and you'll find out why, because she actually did resign. And so that was the first part, and I was her publicist then. And then after that, what I realized about Vanessa was that she really wasn't Miss America in the traditional sense of what Miss America represented, meaning all the other candidates at that point, all the contestants, were mostly white. And a lot of them were brought up in the pageant world since the time they were 5. So this was like the mountaintop when you get to compete for, but they had been doing this, all their lives, and she did it for the scholarship money. So she really wasn't in it for as a pageant person. Her parents, they didn't tell her all the time she was beautiful. She didn't walk around the house in Miss America clothes and all that stuff. So, but she also didn't represent the pictures that she took when she was a teenager, and she thought she said she didn't sign a release for it. So she wasn't either of those people. So, when you have two diametrically opposed images that the public is trying to decipher, who are you? Who do you represent? And she's black, and she was the first black woman, so she had that badge of honor, or this, more disgrace because of that. And so the goal was to try to find out if we could merge or forge an image that she could live with, where she could potentially be successful in the entertainment business. And the one thing that I thought that she had, and the talent that she used, was she could sing. She wasn't really she had a really unique voice. It was soulful, but it wasn't like really strong R&B. But it was a good voice, and I thought if I helped to get her with the right producers and everything, she could have a career in the music industry. So that was my big role in helping to shape her and give her an avenue where I thought she could be successful. And it wasn't easy. I got a bunch of rejections from, I don't know, 8 or 9 record companies. And to be honest, I never wanted to manage her, but she asked me to, and I decided to. And then we had a love story, and then we had kids. So now I'm her manager, and I'm her, publicist, and I'm her husband, and father of our kids. So it was a lot. But it was all good. I don't regret anything. She changed my life in a very positive way, especially my kids. So, we were together for 14 years, and I think we both gained from it. We both gained something from it. She changed my life. I helped to change her life. But I credit her for, I was only there for the first 10 years as her manager, and the rest of her career is on her. It's her ability to be persistent and to understand. I think she learned not to make the same mistakes that she made before. That's, again, that the whole spirit of this book is about talking about success and how do you sustain success as opposed to fame, because she wasn't famous, for anything other than that for almost 10 years. It took a decade to actually turn the candles, turn the light off that, and really where people would accept her as an entertainer. And the first time it happened for me, where I thought that I maybe had been successful, was when she was in Kiss of the Spider Woman. David Rich, who was the New York Times reviewer of the show, the first night she opened, he was the first one to use her name without former Miss America nude pictures. And I said, now we've made it, because finally she got her name back. Didn't mean that people forever, everybody remembers what happened, but she was able to own her own name to get that back. And so to me, that's what real career building is about. When you have a crisis, or you have a setback, and at what point do you get over it, and can you move away from it? And it took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take, but it did happen. So that's the best.
And she was just on Broadway, like at the show. POTUS just ended, and it was fabulous. So before we go to the book signing, are there any questions? Anybody have a question you want to ask Ramon? Now's your time.
What was it like working with the Bee Gees?
What was it like working with the Bee Gees? George wants to know.
The Bee Gees is a really interesting story too, because they were the #1 group in the world when I worked with them. They were they had 5 songs at one time from Saturday Night Fever in the top of the pop charts at one time, and they got caught in a. If you guys remember, there was a time when disco music was really, really popular. They didn't popularize it, but they became the most successful representatives of it. They made more money. They became more famous than any other disco act. But disco music ended up being rejected by the industry. It's the only format of music that I know of where the industry helped to jettison its demise. You know, they stopped playing it. The Academy, I mean, the Grammy Awards didn't want to award anybody that was who did disco music. I represented a guy named Freddie Perrin and Dino Farakis, and those are the guys that did I Will Survive and Peaches and Herb. And Freddie had 12 nominations for his disco music in 1 year. It was the most nominations other than Henry Mancini.
Wow.
And he only won one award for I Will Survive. So it was a backlash, and that was an industry decision that they didn't want to continue this music. And the Bee Gees got trapped in it, and I was the only black executive at Rogers and Cowan at the time. And the reason why they were in a Jet magazine, put them on the cover with the OJs, and basically accused them of stealing black music and taking money out of black artists' hands because they were doing, they were doing a combination of dance, pop, and some R&B, and that's really what disco music was. It was a combination, and Donna Summer was big then. There were other disco artists, but they wrote this, and so they came to me and they said, "Okay, well, we know you know Jet, so how can we turn this around? How can we turn this idea?" Because the Bee Gees really hated the idea that they were being considered called thieves of music, when it really wasn't true. But they did. They had a guy named Arif Martin, and they did change their music. They were all pop, and they put some beats, and there was some soul in what they did. And so they did use some of black music, but it wasn't really in any different in a way than a lot of other artists were doing it. So I gave them 3 choices on what to do. And one was just ignore it because it's Jet Magazine. You guys are big pop stars. I mean, who really cares? Your audience is not reading Jet Magazine. So I said we can ignore it, and if it really blossoms into a much bigger issue, we'll deal with it. I said I could get them to run a retraction, but if you've ever seen a retraction in Jet Magazine, it's like 2 lines. They don't give, there's no such thing as letters to the editor. Like if you do it to the New York Times, you could really say your piece there, or the LA Times. They really allow, if there's a letter to the editor, it's massive, but not. So I said, well, let's think above the bar. Let's try to do something, out of the box. And I said, what about if they did something more humanitarian, just to say that they care about black people, not they don't, take it above it. And so I said, let's put together, how about if I hook you up with a major black organization and you guys give them some money? And in return, you get some good PR that you care about black people. Really, that was the bottom line. So I said, how about, I gave them 3 or 4 different organizations: the NAACP, the Urban League, Rainbow is one. But I thought the best one was Coretta Scott King, because she was building the Martin Luther King Center for Social Change in Atlanta. That wasn't done. She was still fundraising, and they were going to be doing a concert in Atlanta on their tour. And I said, why don't we give them one show? Donate one show to them, and we'll do a big press conference with Coretta Scott King, and then you'll have your badge of honor with the black community that you can wear for a long, long time. So they said, yes, we want to do that. So we were planning on doing this, and there wasn't like a straight amount of money involved. But again, in the book, I explained how that went awry. It didn't turn out. They did end up giving her some money, but it wasn't the big idea that I had envisioned and hoped for. And the key was Coretta, when they came back and they said, we want to give you less money. Coretta said, Ramon, the thing is, I will not let my husband's name be pimped for that amount of money. And that's exactly what she said. And she was right. It was, what they did was not, you know, they didn't prepare me for it, and I was stuck with having to deal with it. But you know, philanthropic efforts really work better when both people are passionate and they want to help each other. And I learned a big lesson of trying to put apples and oranges together because they were apple and oranges. So I never did that again. And the other lesson I learned on that is I didn't have a contract. And she didn't ask for a contract, and neither did they. And I thought, well, that's another lesson I learned. Because if I was a manager and I would have been asked to do that deal, I would have gotten a signed contract where that the money that we had agreed on would have had to been paid. But so you learn, these are lessons that you learn, and that I also share in the book. That, you know, like I said, it's an imperfect business, but you do learn lessons, and all these different people that I had an opportunity to work with, they all taught me something.
Beautiful. Hey guys, you have to read the book, The Fame Game. The Fame Game is here. We have books, but guess what? We don't actually have enough for everyone. So first come, first serve, and we will get autographed copies to anyone who would like to purchase a book when these are sold out. Ramon is going to go over to the fabulous pool house or over here to sign books. Thank you. Thank you, Ramon.
Thank you. Thank everybody.